What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks, and today we are doing a deck tech on Rashmi and Ragavan. Now the goal of this deck is simple. We're going to create a lot of artifacts. Then once we create those artifacts, we're going to get value off of those artifacts. We're going to do damage to our opponents with those artifacts, and we're going to get some free spells doing it. It's going to be pretty fun. We're going to get a lot of value, and additionally we have a way to turn all of those artifacts into creatures to go ahead and take all of our opponents out at once. So if that sounds like a deck tech you'd like to get into, let's get into it. Okay, the first thing we need to do to abuse her ability is to know exactly what's on top of our opponent's library. That way we know what we're getting. Lantern of Insight will let us know exactly what's on top of all of our opponent's library. Expel from Araska, having 10 permanents on the battlefield is kind of this deck's bread and butter, so we're definitely going to have that Ascend ability to put a target permanent or non-land permanent on top of our opponent's library. This way we know exactly what we're getting, and it can kind of act as removal. You know, get rid of their biggest threat, and then we get our Rashmi trigger, and now their biggest threat is now our biggest threat. I like it. Temporal Spring, Submerge, and Vanishment kind of do the same thing. Submerge is almost always going to be a free spell because, hey, someone's always playing green, and we ourselves are going to be playing blue, so that island and forest requirement is not going to be hard to meet. Primal Command, super solid. Not only can we use this to tutor a creature card for us, but we can also put target non-land permanent on top of its owner's library, so we're definitely targeting our opponents for that. Memory Lapse can counter a spell, and then that countered spell is going to go on top of the opponent's library, and then we can get that countered spell. So we get rid of their biggest threat, or a threat we didn't want to resolve, and then we get it ourselves. Now, Rashmi and Ragavan only trigger once per turn, but hey, we can fix that. Let's use Helm of the Host to create token copies of Rashmi and Ragavan. Now we get several copies a turn. Vile Duplication, Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, and Spark Double will also net us a token copy of our commander, or honestly, our most broken legendary creature on the battlefield. We do run Paco and Haldan, so creating token copies of our best boy is gonna be extremely broken. Strionic Resonator, just another super solid way to double up on that triggered ability. Now, let's get into how we're going to create that massive board of tokens. We have Elmer Uvenwald Informant, Tireless Tracker, and Lonus Cryptozoologist. These three cards can reliably get us those clue tokens. Now we can draw cards or leave them on the battlefield. That way we guarantee a free spell off of our opponents. Additionally, we do have other ways to get value off of artifacts by tapping them in various different ways. Tireless Provisioner, Jolene, and Zorn. These are going to be our treasure token generators, right? It's going to be really useful doubling up on the token our commander creates while going ahead and giving us other avenues of creating treasure tokens. Additionally, on top of being very valuable sources of mana, mixing treasure tokens with clue tokens gives us some board wipe protection, right? Because if someone destroys all artifacts, we can use our treasure tokens to go ahead and sack our clue tokens to draw cards instead of losing our whole board and getting a huge feels bad. Treasure Map is super solid. It's going to give us that scry in the early game, and then we can flip it, get the treasure tokens, and sack treasure tokens to draw cards. We do also have some mass treasure token generation with Bootlegger, Stash, and Brass's Bounty. Now we can go ahead and get a ton of treasure tokens, and you know for sure we're going to be getting a free spell off of Rashmi's and Ragavan's trigger, while just, you know, ramping us to the moon. Additionally, we do run Academy Manufacturer. Now, whenever we're creating those treasure tokens, clue tokens, we're getting two of those other tokens as well. This can literally flood the board with artifacts very quickly. Curse of Opulence, not only will this incentivize our opponents to attack someone other than us, but it's going to give us those gold tokens as well whenever they do attack that player. Thopter Assembly, super useful right after we lose all of our clue or treasure tokens because it inevitably will happen. Now we'll have 6 artifacts out of nowhere and our commander will be back online for those free spells. Mirror Battlesphere, same thing, right? We get a lot of artifact tokens and, you know, our commander will be back online. Chrome Host Seed Shark. I like this because it just throws artifacts onto the battlefield. It's really efficient, and if we need creatures, we can go ahead and turn those tokens into creatures, but honestly, they're just tokens that sit on the battlefield. That's all this deck really needs. Now, let's double up on those tokens another time and include Adrix and Nev. That way, you know, when we create treasure tokens, it's double the treasure tokens, double the mirror tokens. This card goes insane in the deck, especially if you slap a Helm of Host on them. Now that we have a huge board state of a lot of tokens, let's tap those tokens for some value. Urza Lord High Artificer and Gazaleth Prismari is going to let us tap those tokens for mana, which can be extremely useful because now all our clue, treasure, and food tokens are mana rocks. I love it. Shimmer Dragon, we're tapping those tokens to now draw cards. Super useful. Inspiring Statuary will let us tap our artifacts to go ahead and cast our spells. Brutaclad, this guy's one of the ways we can reliably win with this deck. Now all of our useless tokens are creature tokens, and we can swing outright to take out one of our opponents. And hey, if you'd like to join me in Magical Christmas Land for a second, if we have Helm of the Host on the battlefield, we can create a ton of tokens of our commander, or even Brutaclad himself. You'll just be left with a whole board of Brutaclads that creates a lot of mirror tokens at the start of combat, and then we can turn those mirror tokens into more Brutaclads, effectively doubling our board every turn. That just sounds insane to me. Hedron Detonator, Reckless Fireweaver, and Ingenious Artillerist. Dealing damage to our opponents every time an artifact enters the battlefield is going to be extremely broken. Just imagine a Brass's Bounty with Academy Manufacturer on the battlefield. If we have 10 lands, that's going to deal 30 damage to each opponent. Absolutely insane. Additionally, we can use Hedron Detonator for some solid card advantage. Cyberdrive Awakener, this card's going to feel like a Crater Hoof in this deck. If we get this on the battlefield with a lot of artifacts, we're definitely going to be taking someone out, if not winning the game. Kappa Cannoneer, I could not resist putting this guy in the deck, right? There's a very good chance that we can get this guy to 30 power and just start throwing an unblockable turtle at our opponents. Let's go ahead and talk about the core of the deck. We have Rashmi. One, it's solid card advantage because you get the card into your hand either way, and we could just get free spells off of it, which is exactly what this deck wants to do, cast free spells. Paco, Arcane Retriever, and Halden. I like these guys in the deck because honestly they can double as another commander. I know we run a lot of creatures in the deck and they don't really synergize very well with creatures, but once we're exiling a ton of our opponent's decks and just casting spells for free off of their decks, we won't even need to worry about casting cards from our own deck because of the engine these guys create just by themselves. Swiftfoot Boots is solid protection for our commander. Eternal Witness, another thing that can just get us whatever we need back from our graveyard into our hand. Quicksmith Genius, I like this because it's really good card selection. We're going to have a lot of artifacts entering the battlefield, and when they do, we can get rid of our useless cards to hopefully draw some more impactful cards. Conduit of Worlds, another thing that I've been putting in more decks. If we lose our key pieces, this is super solid for getting them back, and it just lets you play your land cards from your graveyard. Then we have, of course, Sol Ring and all of the signets. One, it's going to make the deck super consistent early game. Additionally, it does help our commander cast cards for free because they are all artifacts. Moving on to card draw, we have Universal Surveillance. This is going to be super solid because we can use our artifacts to help cast it. Fairy Mastermind, I'm giving this card a shot. I think it's going to be extremely powerful. Beast Whisperer, we do run a lot of creatures, so it's going to be super solid. Guardian Projects, solid for the same reason. Teferi's Ageless Insight, I like this because of all of the clue tokens we run. Now we're going to draw two cards every time we sack one of those tokens instead of one, making it really worth cracking them. Jessica's Will, a super solid card. It's basically a staple at this point, and honestly, it's a staple because it performs really well. Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Now, this card might be a head scratcher, but honestly, the value it gives is insane, and we don't have that much graveyard recursion, so we're not going to care about escaping this guy, exiling 5 cards, and then we have a very good repeatable engine to throw lands onto the battlefield and draw cards. Moving on to removal, we have an Offer You Can't Refuse, a super solid counterspell. Chaos Warp and Beast Within are going to get rid of any pesky permanents we need gone. Blasphemous Act and Chain Reaction can get rid of all creatures onto the field. Notably, this is going to be really good right before we use Cyberdrive Awakener because we can clear the battlefield and then take everybody out. I do run Bane of Progress. I know our game plan is create a lot of tokens, but honestly, someone might get ahead of us at some point in the game, and we might just need to get rid of some artifacts or enchantments. So it is going to be worth it to bite the bullet, and at least if we do have to bite the bullet, we will have a massive Bane of Progress. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. This seems like a very unique commander. As always, let's leave some upgrade suggestions in the comment section below. I always welcome it. And lastly, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors. I'll see you in the next one.